Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be discussing about the points that are inside, outside, and on the production possibility curve. First, let's see what does the points that are inside the PPC represent. So let's get started. So basically, I've drawn a production possibility curve that is showing a point that is inside the curve, and that is labeled as point A. Now, point A is telling us that we are producing 30 units of good X while we are producing 50 units of good Y. So we have 30 units of X and we have 50 units of Y. Now, first of all, remember that whenever there will be a point that is inside the PPC, that is whenever we are producing a combination that is inside a production possibility curve. So any point that is inside a production possibility curve basically represents inefficient utilization of resources. It represents that the combination that we are producing, it is not fully utilizing our resources, and that is why in that sense we say that the resource utilization is quite inefficient. It's inefficient allocation of resource as well, right? Because we are below full employment, because on the production possibility curve represents full employment of resources, and we are below full employment. So we are, whatever resources we have, whatever land, capital, and labor we have, we're not utilizing it to the maximum potential. And we'll see that or represent that through a diagram as well, because if I move my if I move from inside the PPC towards the PPC, right? Inside the PPC to, let's say, if I move it towards the PPC like this, and or let's say if I move it on the PPC. So from inside the PPC, if I go to on the PPC, so let's see what kind of a combination will I be getting if I am at a point that is on the PPC. So if I move let's say horizontally on the PPC, so now I am making how many units at point B? How many units of good X am I making? I'm making, let's say, let's say 45 units of good X. So at point B, I am making 45 units of good X, and the thing that we need to note over here is that we haven't really forgone the production of good Y. We are still making 50 units of good Y. So at point A as well, we are making 50 units of good Y, and at point B as well, we are making 50 units of good Y. But at point B, we are producing a higher output of good X. So the point is that if we had the potential to actually be at point B, and we had the potential to produce 50 units of good Y at the same time 45 units of good X, then why were we actually producing 30 units of good X with 50Y? If we can right now produce 45 units of good X with 50Y, then why were we making 30X with 50Y, right? It's because if we have increased the production of good X by 15, then we aren't really foregoing any good Y here. And the reason is that there's no opportunity cost here. So if you move from inside the production possibility curve to on the production possibility curve, you don't see any opportunity cost here right now, because you're not foregoing anything. And the simple reason is that since your resources were unemployed, your resources were scarce, you had idle capacity. And since your resources were scarce, you sort of weren't utilizing them. And if you weren't utilizing them, you weren't really reallocating or allocating them to any productive use. So if you're now using them to, let's say, produce more units of good X, let's say 15 more units of good X, so there's no opportunity cost, because those resources were lying idle. They were just lying idle. You had spare capacity. It's not that you were using those resources to actually produce certain units of good Y, right? And then now you're reallocating them to produce more of X. It's not like that. It's not working like that. So they were scarce, they were lying idle, and you were not doing anything about those resources. So you had a lot of spare capacity. When you utilize that spare capacity, so there's no reallocation taking place. Hence, there's no opportunity cost in that sense. So basically, what's happening here is that you're making more X without foregoing any Y, and as a result of that, it's clear sign that you were basically inefficient. It was representing idle capacities. What you write is you're representing idle capacity. It's representing spare capacity. It's representing that you were below full employment. You were underutilizing your capacity, since the production possibility curve represents the maximum combination or the maximum potential your potential combinations of goods and services that you can make using your resources. So you're below your potential combinations that you could have made, because you're at a point that is inside the PPC. So having said that, why could you be at a point inside the PPC? This usually occurs. So this could be because of there are structural inefficiencies in the industries. Your industry is inefficiently utilizing, your economy is inefficiently utilizing your resources, and because of that inefficiencies within the economy that exist and persist, and you are sort of inside the production possibility curve. Instead of efficiently allocating and utilizing your resources, you end up producing less than what you possibly could have, right? Another reason that could occur, because another reason that could happen because you're inside a PPC is that it could also be because there is a recession that is going on. We know what a recession is. It's an economic downturn that is characterized by severe levels of falling aggregate demand or total spending in the economy, and as a result of that, when your spending goes down, your firms unemploy a lot of your resources, that is land, labor, capital, and that results into a lot of unemployment of resources, right? So because of that unemployment of resources that happens in a recession, that could be another reason why you are inside the PPC. Now remember that the more inside the PPC you get, the more inefficient you will become, the more inside the PPC. So yes, point A in this PPC is also inefficient, but point B is more inefficient than point A, and point B is representing a higher degree of unemployment, or the extent of unemployment of resources at point B is much higher than at point A. And the more resources you utilize, the more resources you employ, the more resources are being utilized to produce goods and services to generate that GDP and incomes. So basically you move from a point that is from point B to, let's say, point A. So you move basically closer to the PPC, right? So point A could be either closer to the PPC. So if you utilize that spare capacity, if you utilize that resources, if you utilize those resources, so you move closer to the PPC. So there could be either possibilities you will write in the exam. You could actually end up you move closer to the production possibility curve, to the PPC, or if you assuming that all your resources are fully utilized in that sense, you either move closer to the PPC, and if they are fully utilized, you move to a point that is on the PPC. So the point, guys, what I'm trying to tell over here is that it could be either ways. Either you could be close to the PPC at point A, or that point A could basically exist on the PPC as well. Maybe you hypothetically speaking, you utilize all your resources, and then you ended up being fully employed in that case, because at point A point A is representing full employment of resources. All your resources are basically fully employed, right? So basically, guys, what we're trying to say over here is that a point that is inside the production possibility curve, guys, is representing idle capacity, inefficient utilization of resources. Is representing unemployment of resources, unemployment of land, labor, and capital. It's representing idle capacity. It's representing unemployment. That's what you need to know. Okay, guys, now let's move on to what does a point that is, and before that, one more thing. Remember that the more the underutilization, the more below full employment you are, the higher deep down inside the PPC you are. Remember that the more unemployment you have, the more recession you have, the more inefficient resource allocation you have, the more inside the PPC you will be, right? And the lesser you have, you will be close to the PPC. Although you will be at a point inside still, but not that deep inside, right? Also, guys, remember that I don't know whether I should mention this over here or not, but yeah, just to let you know, assuming that you guys know some basic of PPC, uh, basically a point that is inside the production possibility curve is different from a point that from a situation where the PPC curve shifts inwards. So a point inside the PPC, which I just explained right now, is due to a completely different reason than a point than a situation that would exist when your PPC would actually shift to the left, that is inwards. And we're going to see that when I'm going to be making another separate video on the PPC shifting inwards, and I'm probably going to be connecting the point inside and how that point inside is different from a PPC shifting left in that video, right? But not here. Anyways, moving on, if if you're basically on the production possibility curve, so point A and B are both efficient, right? Whether you're at point A, B, or C, or D, any point that is on the PPC curve, whether you're allocating all your resources to producing good X, let's say this could be point C. Point C is that you're allocating all resources to good X, and zero good Y is being made. Well, let's say point Z is representing all resources being employed to good Y, while zero X is being made. But in either case, whether you are at Z, A, B, or C, any combination on the production possibility curve represents full employment of resources. It represents that all your idle resources have been fully employed, and now there's no idle capacity. There's absolutely full employment of resource. It represents an efficient resource allocation. There's no idle capacity or spare capacity that exists. And as a result of that, having said that, on the PPC curve represents full employment of resource. Another thing is that I need to mention over here is there's another point that exists, with respect to the PPC, and that is a point that is outside the PPC. Now, guys, any point that is outside the production possibility curve, such as shown over here at point X, is representing unattainable and unachievable combination. So at a point, a combination that is because at point X, let's assume that at point X you're making sort of let's say probably I don't know, probably around, let's say, 70 units of good X, while you're making, let's say, 90 units of good Y. So at point X, I mean, this is not what you're making, this is what you desire to make. But that's not possible because you can't really make it, right? Because this combination is unattainable, it's unachievable. Why is that? The simple reason is that it's lying outside the production possibility curve, and any point that lies outside the production possibility curve, any combination of that is unattainable, it's unachievable, because you don't have the resources to achieve that combination. And the simple reason is that you guys need to understand that this production possibility curve, this boundary, is basically a combination of is a sum of different combinations, or it's basically representing a line. If you join all these different dots and you join them together, each dot is basically representing a combination. And if I sort of join these dots together like this, I get a production possibility frontier. So basically this frontier is telling me the potential combination that I could make, right? This is my limit, this is my potential, so I can't exceed my potential. So that is why any point that is outside the production possibility curve is unachievable. This is a point that is unattainable, and that is because of scarcity. So basically, since this point is unattainable, the economy can't really achieve this combination. So if the economy really wants to produce 70 units of good X, if the economy really wants to produce 70 units of good X, in that case, what the option is that you could only possibly sort of make, you need to make, the only combination that is achievable is probably, let's assume a number, let's say 25 units of good Y. So combination X is unattainable. It's out of the league right now with the given resources. But point A is achievable. So if you really want to make 70 units of good X, you need to see that at 70 units of good X, how many good Y can you make? And if you touch that point on the PPC, and let's take out the corresponding value on the Y axis, it gives us that good Y is being made. 25 units of good Y is actually being made with 70x. So with 70x, you can't make 90y. With 70x, you cannot make 90y. So 70x and 90y is not possible. However, this is not possible. However, 70x and 25y is definitely possible, right? So this again is representing scarcity. So any point outside the PPC curve is unachievable, unattainable with your existing scarce resources. However, an exception is possible if your PPC curve shifts outwards, which will be the topic of discussion for some another video. However, also remember, guys, that when you're writing in the exam, if you're writing that this point is unattainable, remember that yes, this point is unattainable, but it is desirable, right? It is unattainable, but it is desirable. So why is it desirable? Why it is desirable? Because if you look at the situation, at point X, you're making 70x and 90y, while at point A, which is right now, which is possible, you're making 70x with 25y. So definitely, if you achieve, let's say, if in any case this point becomes achievable because of so and so or any other reason that you will study later when you will study the shifts, if this becomes achievable, if this becomes attainable, in that situation, we will be producing more units of Y. From 25 units of Y, the society will now be able to consume 90Y, right? So definitely this point is desirable because it's a desirable, it makes the society better off. It makes the society better off in terms of more output, more GDP, more welfare, more living standards, because you're consuming more Y. And from 25y to 90y, you're producing more Y. So producing more Y would generate more employment, and obviously living standards would go up and poverty would go down, as well as consuming more Y would definitely improve living standards, and it would improve consumer welfare, and society would be better off in this context. So there's a lot to write. I mean, there's a lot to think, and there's a lot to write, and there's a lot to explain, and there's so many points that you can mention to impress the examiner, right? So yeah, guys, that's it. I think I'm done with this video. So I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, take care, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my channel. And also, if you've understood the video, do mention in the comments that you've understood it. I read the comments, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys comment. Until then, take care.